Tonight, renewed calls for justice in the Eric Garner case. Garner's family slapping the city with a $75 million lawsuit in his death. Well, tonight, the family's new attorney, Jonathan Moore, he speaks to RFL about where the case stands now and where he believes it is headed down the road. And Election Day, believe it or not, just 2 weeks away, excuse me, I didn't want to scare anybody there. Tonight, we are hearing from Congressman Chris Gibson about the race to keep his job in New York's 19th Congressional District. Plus, will Mayor Bill de Blasio ever be able to shake the bad press he's getting due to his wife's chief of staff, Rachel Nordlinger? New reports show that her controversial boyfriend, the man who never stops giving bad headlines, tried to name drop in court not once but twice to get out of parking tickets they racked up while driving her car. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thanks so much for joining us. And tonight, we will begin with a case that rocked New York as well as other parts of this country over the summer. The amateur video captured from a cell phone camera of 43-year-old Eric Garner being taken down by NYPD officers on Staten Island. It stunned the nation. Police say Garner selling loose cigarettes, Garner put in a chokehold, a move banned by the department, and he then later died. City medical examiner says the chokehold aided in Garner's death and ruled it a homicide. The case sparked protest and even a meeting about the NYPD tactics led by Reverend Al Sharpton, who shared a stage with not only the mayor but also the police commissioner, Bill Bratton. Now, high-powered civil rights attorney Sandy Rubenstein, he was set to take on the case defending Garner's family. However, as you probably know if you've picked up any daily tabloid, Rubenstein is no longer on the case after being accused of raping a woman with ties to Sharpton's National Action Network. Now, civil rights attorney Jonathan Moore, he will represent the family as they move forward with their $75 million lawsuit against both the city and the New York Police Department. Moore, he represented 3 of the 5 men who were wrongfully convicted in the Central Park jogger case. And Dominic Carter, he spoke with him earlier today.
Well, Richard, we can tell you that Mr. Moore is the new lawyer for the Garner family, but we started out late this afternoon with the highly controversial topic that has dominated the tabloids. We begin this way tonight. How does it feel to replace Sandy Rubenstein under these circumstances, given the alleged rape allegation?
Well, I mean, obviously nobody knows what happened there other than the people who were there, and that's being handled by the district attorney's office, and so I'm not going to comment on that one way or the other. You know, everybody is entitled to the presumption of innocence and to due process under the law, so, you know, that will take place. I think the decision of the family, though, to move away from that firm and to find other counsel was the right one, because they were concerned about their case going forward being tainted by the association. And even if it's not true, the association is going to live on in every headline in the New York Post and New York Daily News. And so that's how we ended up with the case.
Is it awkward for you replacing him?
Well, not necessarily awkward. I mean, I've been doing this a few years. I mean, you have cases where, you know, your client decides to go with other counsel, and so it's not uncommon to be substituted in and out of a case. I guess because it's such a high-profile case, it's probably more awkward for Sandy Rubenstein than for us. I mean, we're happy to be involved in this case. It's an important case. It's the kind of case we do very well and have been doing well for a lot of years. So, you know, one man's floor is another man's ceiling. However you want to, whatever the expression is, the opportunity presented itself, and we, you know, took it.
Mr. Moore, you have a strong reputation of winning high-profile civil rights cases in this city. You're best known for your work in the stop and frisk suit against New York City and representing 3 of the 5 wrongly convicted men in the Central Park jogger case. I want to talk about Mr. Garner's family, in which his wife says, quote, "We are not out for the money, we are out for justice." Define justice, because, for example, based on the New York Times, it's looking increasingly difficult, like there will even be an indictment in Missouri, at least as of tonight. So define justice.
Well, that's That's a hard, that's a hard task. But I think justice in this case, at a minimum, involves making sure that there are no more Eric Garners, that this doesn't happen to somebody else. It's clear that over the years, whatever rules and regulations the police department had about chokeholds have sort of morphed into something that allows officers to do this on a regular basis. The CCRB in the last 5.5 years handled over 1,100 complaints of the use of chokeholds. So it's clear that there's a problem within the department with respect to the training, supervision, and monitoring of officers with respect to chokeholds. So justice in this case is, a couple of things. It's justice for the family. I mean, that's, they lost the supporter, the person who supported them, their husband, their father, their son, and that's a loss, and that should be compensated. But justice also is trying to make sure it doesn't happen again, and that's, I think, what we do so well in our firm, is that we're not just about trying to get money for our clients. We're about trying to change the way the police department goes about their work, such as in the stop and frisk case, so that doesn't happen again. As a result of the stop and frisk case, for instance, there are over 500,000 fewer reported stops and frisks every year in New York City. If you want to measure justice in a case, that's a huge result. That means 500,000 people, young black and African men and Latino men mostly, are not being stopped and harassed and going put through that process that has so divided the community from the police. And so, in terms, if you're looking for to do work that changes the way things happen, and that's a good example of it. And that's what hopefully what we bring to this case.
Now, Richard, this attorney, Jonathan Moore, whether folks recognize him or not, he's a major player. We hear a lot about stop and frisk. This is the lawyer, as you know, we were in the courtroom every day, that actually beat the city of New York on the stop and frisk trial and won before Judge Shira Scheindlin. And so he's a major player. His involvement in civil rights goes back all the way to the Michael Stewart case, when I believe it was that case, when he won a $1.75 million settlement. He did the Central Park case, but he does not. And we're going to have part 2 of the interview coming up later on this week. But he does not have any faith in Staten Island District Attorney Dan Donovan. He does not believe that Donovan's going to do a good job handling this case.
Well, and I want to talk to you about, because you asked that question, I thought it was a good one, the definition of justice, because it's civil and criminal. Let's bring in our panel. Shelley Mayer, Democratic New York State Assemblywoman, represents the city of Yonkers in Albany. Dominic, who you met, political journalist and author, and Phil Reisman, columnist for the Journal News and Loha.com, the paper of record in Westchester and Rockland counties. Let me start with you, Dom, on one thing. You asked about that. Remind everybody, because, yes, there's a civil suit, but there's also a criminal suit. First of all, which is going to come first here?
Well, in all likelihood, we're gonna know relatively soon. It could be a couple of weeks. It could be a couple of months. The Staten Island District Attorney is investigating this. So to answer your question, basically criminal comes first, but it's a two-pronged approach. First, Mr. Donovan will decide whether to indict or not to indict. It could be one officer. It could be several officers. He may find that they were acting within the law and did nothing wrong. At the same time, you have the feds that are looking at this. They are looking at a possible civil rights violation. Oftentimes, what happens in cases like this is when the local officials don't prosecute, occasionally the feds will come in. So we'll see. But what's definitely going to happen in all likelihood is a multi-million-dollar Richard settlement with the family. And so that's why this was a major loss for attorney Sandy Rubenstein, because his firm now is going to lose out on millions of dollars that he was basically guaranteed.
You know, Jelly, for me, it's not just what happened that day that was caught on video in Staten Island. In many ways, community policing, broken windows, etc., was also on trial as a policy. And I remember even the chokehold, for as much as you certainly saw Bill de Blasio campaigning that he was going to change that whole policies, he wouldn't even say definitively if that was a legal or illegal use of a police policy. And then Bratton has definitively said community policing, as long as I'm commissioner, is going to be part of this. Does that get clarified, you think, through this trial?
Well, I think the one positive thing you can say is that this causes a complete, full-throated argument about what policing is involved. And I come back to my point, which is this is a leadership issue. I mean, you have a department as big as the New York City Police Department. You can change policies, and you can do your best to get them down to every police officer. And I think one of the disturbing things here is all the officers standing around and not the individual officer who engaged in this conduct. It's difficult to change the culture of a huge police department. That is what you need strong leaders for. I hope this is an opportunity for the New York City Police Department and others, like the Yonkers Police Department, to say, let's just take a moment and re-examine. I was going to ask about that, because you represent, with others, one of the biggest cities in all of the state here. Does what happened in New York, more specifically Staten Island, does it filter down to Yonkers? Oh, it's absolutely the subject of conversation, certainly among police officers who are very agitated and concerned about it, and police leadership. But again, to me, this is the opportunity for police leadership to actually lead, and I call on mayors and other people who appoint police, leaders to do their job and use this as a teaching moment. That, to me, that it must be.
Phil, I know that we're going to be talking sooner than people may realize again about the Chamberlain case, the Dan Roy Henry case here. Some of the people involved in those cases have told me that what happened in Ferguson, Missouri, what happened in Staten Island and in other flashpoints around this country, it will be part of this as well.
It does. It becomes part of the string of these events, but they're all very different. I mean, when you take in one case, the Dan Roy Henry case, it was a car that was coming at the police officer. In this case, you don't have, and there was some, I'm trying to remember in the Chamberlain case exactly what the circumstances were, but there was some other perceived threat.
Yes.
The thing about this case, which I think is disturbing, is the I can't breathe part of it, where he is down, he says, I cannot breathe. He obviously was overweight. He had some, I guess he had some physical problems, health problems as well. At that point, they really got to know. I mean, that's like saying uncle.
Yeah.
I can't breathe. And I think that there has to be some kind of, backing off at that point, it seems to me.
And I will just say for the national dialogue about this, listen, as much as I hate the presence of phone cameras wherever you go for whatever you do, and everyone's self-importance that they got to catalog every moment of their lives, like everyone needs to know it. Think about the conversations about what two different versions would have been in Staten Island had we not seen the video. Think about it, South Carolina, when the guy went to go get his license and he got shot and asked why. That story getting retold without the video, and countless other stories like this. The video has changed our national dialogue on this, because a lot of people, like me, said, my God, I know about driving while black and all this, but I didn't realize it was like this.
And you mentioned video. You didn't have video 10 years ago or 5, as prevalent as it is now. And by the way, just on the Yonkers, there was a case in Yonkers where it was on video where they body slammed a woman who was in an apartment or something. It was
Richard, I know you have to move on, but I want to say that, it appears, Assemblywoman, that you were in the room late this afternoon when we did the interview, because some of the issues that you just talked about, we will hear at a later date exactly the same thing what the attorney said. One, you referred to what the other officers were doing at the scene. That's something that that this attorney refers to. And you also, it was one other point that you made. Leadership. And so he goes on to play, he says that, and you talked about the culture, that your exact words, and those are words that he uses later, Richard, where he claims that, it doesn't matter, as you said, the policy does matter, but it's a culture.
And I got to hit a break here. When we come back, we'll obviously come back to this conversation, but we'll also talk about news, an endorsement of sorts here for Governor Cuomo from the Times, if you want to call it that in a backhanded fashion, but also more headaches here for Bill de Blasio over a problem he frankly thought would have been done by now. We'll get into those issues and more after this.